Hello, welcome everybody from Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. If you already watched the video about Malmö, you know why I am here. The last country in Europe where I can enter without restrictions from Romania. So after my city tour in Malmö, I was taking a train from Malmö to Stockholm. If you do the same trip as me and you have a bigger budget, I recommend to take a flight. It costs more, but it's very fast, like 1 hour. The distance between Malmö and Stockholm is 630 kilometers, so kind of long. So I was sitting in a train 5.5 hours, but it was cheaper for me as a budget traveler. So yeah, I arrived here and I'm starting my city tour now in the capital. I hope you will join me, and we will have a lot of interesting sightseeing locations. Now I'm heading to the Royal Palace of Stockholm, the Stockholm Palace. It will be very beautiful to see it. The city lays on 14 islands which are connected with 52 bridges. So yeah, it's very interesting fact. This is why it's called the Venice of the North. Yeah, currently 700,000 people living here, but if we consider the whole metropolitan area, as they call it, Stockholm, so big Stockholm, then we can count 1,700,000 people. So it's a very big metropolitan area. Regarding to the name of the city, there are two theories. Stock means in German fortress, and in Swedish it means log. I don't know if I translated it correctly in English. I think it's log, it's that big piece of wood, and holm means island. So this is how the name of the city originates. The territory's economy was growing after the German Hansa trading company or association, or how should we name it, expanded their economic and trading routes to Stockholm. And it's a very interesting fact that between the 13th and the 15th century, the city council of Stockholm had 12 German representatives. So there were sitting 24 people in this institute of government, and half of them were German. Very interesting fact. So we just arrived. This is the Stockholm Palace. As you could see from the outside, the palace is really huge. It has 1,430 rooms. It's really big. It was constructed in the 18th century in Baroque style, and in the interior we can find a lot of Rococo design rooms. So if you plan to visit here, you need approximately one day. Well, if you're interested about each detail. Yeah, not all rooms can be visited because, as I said, this is the residence of the royal family of Sweden. This is why they have such a beautiful palace, which was expanded during the centuries. So not all of this was built in the 18th century. Huge meeting room. So as you can see, the castle is under renovation, and unfortunately because of that we cannot visit the Kronor Museum. Kronor was the first citadel built in the 13th century, the first fortress of Stockholm, constructed by the founder of this city, Birger Magnusson. It's really a pity that we cannot go there inside, because we can see the remnants of only one wall of this fortress, dating back to the 13th century. So yeah, it's really old. But if you visit Stockholm and the renovations are finished, it's for your information. Don't miss the Kronor Museum next to the Royal Palace. This is the oldest church in Sweden, the Storkyrkan. It was constructed in 1306, in the beginning of the 14th century. Its name is Storkyrkan, which means the Great Church, but it's often called as Stockholm's Domkyrkan too, which means Stockholm's Cathedral. So this is the most famous church here. Currently the residence of the Bishop of Stockholm from the Church of Sweden. Extensive renovations took place in the 18th century when it was reconstructed as a Baroque church. Another interesting fact about it is that Sweden celebrated the introduction of the Lutheran religion here. So it was the first mass in and Swedish language. And the Princess of Sweden, Victoria, had her wedding here in 2010 with Daniel Westling. So I'm in the harbor of Stockholm, one of the harbors of Stockholm currently, and some interesting facts about it. Fishing and owning a ship is free in Sweden, so there is no obligations and you don't need a permission for it. So a lot of people are just assembling a ship from a store and they're sailing up on the sea. It's very interesting. They say statistically there are 200,000 people owning a ship here, the 2,100 ships at least in Stockholm. Another interesting fact, yeah, every year the Nobel Prize is given here in the capital of Sweden. The Arlanda airport has world's first airplane hotel, because it's a Boeing 747, which is accommodation. So if you visit or you can or you travel through Arlanda airport, it's recommended to try this on overnight on the board of a Boeing 747. The city's subway is also known as the longest art gallery of the world, because it's designed and decorated by a lot of paintings and sculptures and mosaics. It's very beautiful. You know, the Halloween habit to dress up as a witch and other scary beings and yeah, go trick-or-treating. This is the same in Sweden, but on Easter. It's an interesting fact about this habit. I'm curious if they are picking Eastern egg on Halloween or not. Now we are in the old town of Sweden, Gamla stan. It's like traveling back to the medieval ages. Many tiny pedestrian streets and a lot of old buildings. It's a lot of souvenir shops and everything you need. Well, we just saw a Burger King. That's not so medieval. But yeah, you know, the city center is always full with these commercial stuff. A lot of souvenirs. I never get bored of these tiny streets. Really love them. This is the narrowest street in Stockholm. It's just 90 centimeters narrow. Constructed in the 16th century. It has the name of Mårten Trotzig, who was a citizen of Stockholm, and he had a shop here close to the street. He was selling everything, oat and silver stuff and everything. Well, with these graffitis we don't really have the medieval feeling of the street, but it's still kinda interesting. Here's the name of this guy, the seller, the merchant, Mårten Trotzig. unfortunately he was beaten to the death on one of his business trips when he was trying to get his new merchandise. This is the Monteliusvägen, very beautiful view on the city from here. Sorry for the bad noise, someone is cutting some woods here. It's really amazing view from here, it's worth to climb this hill. We are now on the island of Riddarholm, where the most famous attraction is the Riddarholmskyrkan, the Church of Riddarholm, because this was the burial place of the kings of the Sweden between 1664 and 1950. So here in the 20th century, Swedish kings used to have their funeral here. It was a Franciscan monastery which was constructed in the 13th century here, and this was then converted to a Baroque church in the 15th century, and this is what we currently see. Okay, there were some renovations, of course, during the centuries. It's a very beautiful church. Those so tiny passages in the city center, in the old town. This is the main square of Stockholm, the Stortorget. It's in the Gamla stan, the old town. You can find very old and beautiful buildings. It's typical Scandinavian that they are colored in different ways. They use different colors for the buildings next to each other. I saw this in Copenhagen too when I was there. It's in the new harbor in Nyhavn, or in Torshavn too, in the capital of Faroe Islands. It's very, very beautiful and attractive like this. The square is the oldest one in Stockholm, because even after founding the city in the 13th century, they made this square here, so it's part of the city's history. And it was a big bloodbath here in 1520 when the Danish massacred 90 Swedish citizens on the main square. the Brunkenberg Tunnel. It's constructed in 1886 by Oscar II, Swedish king. It's very interesting that they made this pedestrian tunnel under the hill. It's 231 meters long. I never saw such a thing, that tunnel is constructed just for pedestrians. One of the most central squares of Stockholm is the Sergelstorg, named after famous sculptor from the 18th century, Johann Tobias Sergels. He had his workshop here. The square was completed in 1968. You can see some very modern buildings here. The House of Culture, Kulturhuset. And the City Theatre, Stadttheater. This is the Sergelstorg. There are some signs to keep distance, social distancing because of the coronavirus, but nobody's wearing the mask. I think it's a big help that Stockholm has the 4th freshest air in Europe. On the first place is Zurich. Maybe I mentioned before that Stockholm has a lot of greenery, a lot of parks, and built on the 14 islands, that helps a lot to have fresh air. On the second place is Copenhagen, and on the third place I was very surprised that it's Wien, the Austrian capital. But anyway, 4th place is not bad as well. Well, fresh air doesn't block the spreading of the coronavirus, but it's very healthy. This is what I meant. Very beautiful harbors and piers in Stockholm. This is very nice when you just take a random walk in a random direction. Then you'll find a lot of ships and harbors, because so many islands here. On the other side we can see the island of Djurgården. It's a very famous island here in Stockholm, and it's very preferred not only by the tourists but by the locals too, because there are a lot of activities for the weekend which locals can choose. For example, renting a bicycle or renting a boat, a canoe. And there are a lot of museums as well. So as I said, it's very famous because there are so many leisure activities you can choose. There's even a zoo, if I remember well. I always do some research before my trips, what should be visited and what are the most important sightseeing locations. So the Djurgården Island, it's part of the National Royal Parks of Stockholm. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of greeneries, a lot of parks. These royal parks are the most known, most famous ones here. So I'm at the Vasa Museum now, and unfortunately it's closed because they say it's a measure to stop spreading the coronavirus, which is very strange. Sorry for the word, but it's bullshit. Yesterday I was at the Royal Palace and yeah, it was full with tourists. I saw people renovating the museum. I don't know why they just tell the truth, like, okay, we are closed because we are renovating the museum. But anyway, why is this museum very famous? It's the most visited museum in Sweden, because in 1628 the Swedish built a huge vessel, a huge Viking style ship, and this was the hugest ship of those ages, and unfortunately it sank just 2 kilometers after they put it on the water. Probably it's because they couldn't manage the size of this amazing ship. And in 1961 they managed to rescue this ship under the water and to bring it to this museum and to restore it. So they say it's 95% in its original state. Yeah, I was very curious about this Viking ship, but yeah, maybe next time if I come to Stockholm, I don't know when this will be, I will do a separate vlog about this museum and about the history of the ship. And if you're a big fan of Alba, I recommend Alba Museum here in Djurgården. Can be visited. But on the island of Djurgården you can find almost everything. You can see an amusement park in the background, and you can really visit with families and with children, because there's a lot of interesting museums. For example, this Junibacken is a museum mostly for kids and families, where the characters of Astrid Lindgren comes alive. Probably you heard about Pippi Longstocking. So there are really much to see here. There's a Viking museum as well, and yeah, if you're doing like a bachelor party or bachelor tour, I can recommend the Museum of Spirits, where you can try a lot of liqueurs, Swedish liqueurs. So yeah, it's really a lot to do here. That's why I told you that Djurgården is, yeah, like the most famous park and island for leisure and entertainment in Stockholm. So we arrived to the entrance of the museum Skansen, all which I listed before. It's not so interesting for me currently. I not really like to go alone to the amusement park. Liquor museum is not an option because it's 11 AM and yeah, the long-stocking Pippi is not so interesting for me too, because I'm not with children, and yeah, it's a long time since I read about that. So this museum is with traditional Swedish houses, but if you're not really interested about architecture and traditional Swedish houses, then you can find an aquarium and a zoo inside as well. For an extra fee you can visit that. And this is the oldest open-air museum of the world. There's another interesting fact about it. Old windmills. So these windmills are from the region of Öland, where in the middle of the 18th century there were more than 2,000 windmills, and one of them we can see here. So they're mainly used, these windmills, in the winter. This is a post office from the village of Viserum, built in the beginning of the 20th century. It's very interesting that this village museum Skansen actually contains a collection of buildings from the whole Sweden. You can find all kind of buildings brought here. Linderud's pig. Interesting. Starting a pig fight. Why did you eat my oat? Oh, this is getting crazy. And there are some big conflicts in this pack, I think. Well, these kind of houses we can still find in the Romanian mountains too. These kind of farms. But these kind of roofs I first saw in Tórshavn in the Faroe Islands. If you didn't watch that video, I can link it here. It's very interesting. And this is a Norse mill. This is how they brought the water from the fountain to get water for the mill. This building is from the medieval ages, from the province of Holland. Don't confuse it with the Norwegian football striker of Borussia Dortmund. This is how it looks like in the inside. Beautiful autumn weather. This belfry was constructed in 1730. It's very old. It was donated to the Skansen Museum. Very Scandinavian style. Yeah, old Scandinavian style. I never saw such a bell tower. Very interesting.
Och i den där runda tror jag också.
This is how a typical semi-camp looked like on the mountains in the 12th century. The Sami was a nomadic nation. They were following the herd of the reindeers, so they could have something to eat. Oh, looks like somebody's snoring very loud here. It's Saint John's church, very beautiful too. There are very beautiful churches in Stockholm. This is the City Hall of Stockholm, built in 1923. It's a huge building. After the ceremony of the Nobel Prize, which is held in the Stockholm Concert Hall, the banquet is organized here in the City Hall. This is the courtyard of the City Hall. As I said, it's a huge building. It's very beautiful too. In Swedish is called Rathuset. I think it's very similar to the German word Rathaus, with a T, Rathaus. I found many similar words, but this is valid for all Scandinavian languages. In fact, they are close to German, or at least some words are similar. Very beautiful courtyard. We are at the front of the Swedish Parliament, the Riksdag, built between 1897 and 1905. The architect was Aron Johansson, and it was built in neoclassical style. Maybe the gate is not so beautiful with these renovations here, but yeah, let's go inside and check it how it looks like closer. After exiting from the Parliament, we can wonder about the Royal Palace, which we already visited. You can see it from another angle. This is still the Parliament. This is the Norrbro Bridge. It's interesting because it was one of the first bridges of Stockholm to built in stone, constructed between 1741 and 1803. The architect was Erik Palmstedt. And this is a better angle to wonder about the Swedish Riksdag, the Parliament. It's much more beautiful than the entrance which we used. So this was everything about Stockholm. I hope that you enjoyed this vlog, and if you did so, then please subscribe to my channel, and it's very important to push the bell icon to get notified about the new travel vlogs. So have a nice day and goodbye.